Then the next question comes not from the administration, but it's kind of a composite question that has come from many of our friends in the diplomatic corps from Africa. And they say, Mr. LaRouche, there are reports now circulating widely that claim that the Obama administration will support an anticipated call by the International Criminal Court for the arrest of General Bashir, the president of Sudan, charging him with a crime of genocide against the people of Darfur. The fighting in Darfur was the result of attempts by the government of Sudan to suppress a rebellion in the Darfur region touched off by the enemies of the national government. The African Union, the Arab League, the Non-Aligned Movement, the Organization of Islamic Conferences, and even the Sudan People's Liberation Movement of Southern Sudan all oppose this indictment because they believe it will lead to war and the destruction of Sudan and the Horn of Africa. They have said that they believe peace is more important. What course of action would you recommend to avoid having this new U.S. administration get drawn into this attack on the government, which would undoubtedly lead to the dismemberment of the nation and certainly the destabilization of the current government?
General Bashir was brought into the position of president of Sudan in the early 1990s. What had happened is that the previous shake-up in the government of Sudan had been involved the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, the Muslim Brotherhood is essentially a British intelligence operation, or British intelligence-controlled operation from the top down. And what had happened in this process is that people who had been associated with the Muslim Brotherhood broke with the Muslim Brotherhood and became Sudan nationalists. In the process, they had a compromised president selected, General Bashir. In this process, so you have a complication of elements around there which are all British intelligence operated. The last time I was in Sudan, I saw a bevy of this stuff. British intelligence all over the way. And I know how to smell British intelligence. It's like fun knowing skunks. And they were all over the place. And the government was being disoriented. And part of it was all Muslim Brotherhood channels from Egypt and other things, and operations by other countries. And they took this one area, which is a very poor area of Sudan, on the border with Chad, and in this area. And they ran an operation there with outside forces coming in and just stirring things up. So it was an operation of the typical type that's run by intelligence services there. There is no genocide by the government of Sudan. However, what you have, including members of the current administration in Washington, have been brainwashed by this thing about genocide, which they've gone so disoriented by this propaganda that they no longer have a grasp on reality. The people that you listed in your question, these types of people, are people who understand this problem, more or less. Some understand the problem in its totality. Other people understand that you don't do that in this area. There are too many cases, and this is typical of British intelligence. It's a British intelligence operation. And I fear is that there are people in the administration, even who are friends of mine in this administration, who will be foolish enough to buy into this heavy propaganda about genocide against the government of Sudan. Yes, there are problems there. There's killing. But this is a result of outside operations in the area, combined with poverty and combined with an economic problem of the government of Sudan as a whole, where it does not have the capability of maintaining adequate security in its own country against these kinds of outside operations. So it's an orchestrated operation. Now, to understand this historically, people should shut their mouths until they go back to 1898 and go back to the time where Lord Kitchener took over Sudan. And Lord Kitchener there are groups of peoples who were actually refugees. They're not tribes. There were refugee groups which fled across the borders, from neighboring borders, into the southern swamp area of Sudan. And this has been a problem in that area. So they took this and they played this thing. But it was always been British intelligence. The Muslim Brotherhood problem. For example, there was I won't bother with that. I could tell you about a story or two about George H.W. Bush and his trip to Sudan, where he slept in what became the foreign ministry. And he did something. But no, the point is there have been operations which to destabilize Sudan as a part of the policy which was introduced to Africa with U.S. approval by Henry Kissinger and others in the middle of the 1970s, which says that the African territory belongs to U.S. and British interests. And the people of Africa are too numerous, and their population has to be reduced, and we have to take over their raw materials and resources. The biggest resource here is in Sudan, just for people who need the intelligence. And we do have some specialists in the United States, State Department specialists, who do have the intelligence, know it. Sudan is the largest territory nation in Africa. It is, apart from the south, which is a water-rich area and jungle-type area, largely, it is the largest grain-growing area of Africa. When the water is there, the grain is grown. With sufficient water supplies, Sudan could practically feed all of Africa, at least with the grain requirements. The problem has been the lack of agreement on promoting the improvement in water management problems in that part of East Africa down into what was called Lake Victoria and below. So that area of East Africa is crucial. But the destabilization of that area, the lack of development, which could be easy, I mean, you don't have to provide that much. All you have to do is increase the guaranteed water supply in the Sudan area each year, so that you have a grain crop each year, and you can begin to feed the population of Africa with that product. Is that good? And everything is done in policy is done to prevent that from being done. I've been into Sudan a number of times, always on this water question. You look at the facts of the area. With water management, which is quite feasible, it's not that expensive in terms of benefit ratio, we could feed a great deal of Africa with the grain which can be grown in the territory of Sudan. Now, that should be the U.S. policy interest in Sudan. We need positive policy interests in these countries. We have to go in with a positive policy, not with who we're going to shoot, but a positive policy of development. We have to make friends with countries on the basis of positive development, the way the United States used to do it. Like you had the U.S. officers who had to rebuild the Egyptian system. There were U.S. officers, veterans of the Civil War, who went over to Egypt and helped them develop their system there. And then the British got them kicked out later. But our interest in Africa, our interest in parts of the world, is to not just to make friends. That's a kind of a sloppy term. Our function as the United States, as we're a republic, our interest in the world is not to have any empires. We hate empires. We hate the British Empire, not only because of the crimes it commits and still commits, but we don't like empires. We believe in nation states. We believe in representative government, constitutional government, nation states. We believe in nation state building. We don't believe in globalization. We believe in nation state building. Globalization is an empire. We don't believe in empires. And therefore, our policy should be consistently to develop, wherever we have the opportunity, to assist in developing nation-state building and dealing with problems such as food shortages, disease control, these kinds of things, practical measures. And the only time we go to war is when we have to defend something like that. And we fight only when that's necessary and only as far as that's necessary. We don't get involved with these imperial policies of this type. And I'm afraid that some of the people, because of the propaganda effort about genocide, 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 a magic word. You want a genocide? George Soros is guilty of genocide. You want to make war on genocide? Make war on one, George Soros. Make war on people like that who commit the genocide in their policies, the drug wars. No, this is a dangerous situation. It would be a terrible thing, a great folly, if the Obama administration were to be sucked into an adventure, such as an adventure against Bashir of Sudan.